power wears many faces. Sometimes it wears a crown, sometimes a swastika. December 1936. The world watches in disbelief as King Edward VIII steps down from the British throne. The first monarch in British history to willingly abdicate. All, he claimed, for love. But what if that was only part of the story? What if the man who gave up the crown for a woman had already given his loyalty to something far darker? What if Britain's king had secret ties to Adolf Hitler? Tonight, we follow the trail of letters, leaked intelligence, and classified missions that reveal a story buried for decades. A story of seduction, betrayal, and the terrifying possibility that Britain almost had a Nazi-sympathetic king. And by the end of this video, you'll understand how close the world came to a royal betrayal that could have altered the outcome of World War II. Keep watching till the end, because the final truth about King Edward VIII will change the way you see royal history. Long before he wore the crown, Edward was never like the other royals. Handsome, charming, rebellious. He lit up rooms, danced with American socialites, and ignored protocol with the ease of a man who never feared consequences. But his charm was a mask. Beneath it, Edward harbored disdain for the political burdens of monarchy. He skipped briefings, dodged responsibilities, avoided war zones. He wanted to live, not rule. And that attitude would prove dangerous in the decade to come. The British public adored him, but those inside government feared he lacked the discipline and foresight required of a modern monarch. Even his private letters revealed a man far more interested in fashion and flirtation than diplomacy or duty. And the woman he chose, Wallis Simpson, twice divorced and very much American, embodied that freedom. Their love was a scandal, and the establishment trembled. But while the newspapers painted him as a romantic rebel, something more dangerous was forming behind the scenes. An alignment not of love, but of ideology. A subtle gravitation toward the rising authoritarian powers of Europe. Edward admired the order, the strength, and the seeming efficiency of fascism. And he wasn't shy about it behind closed doors. Coming up next, the moment he walked away from the throne, and what he walked into instead. The crisis exploded like a time bomb. The church wouldn't accept a twice-divorced woman as queen. Parliament was outraged, and the royal family embarrassed. In December 1936, Edward made his choice. I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king without the help and support of the woman I love. He renounced the throne. His brother became George VI, and the crown slipped away. The world saw a love story. A sacrifice, a monarch brought low by the forces of love and duty. But what history forgets is what happened next. Edward, now the Duke of Windsor, settled into exile. And the enemies of Britain began watching him very closely. Because sometimes the man who steps down is not stepping away. Sometimes he is stepping into something darker. Hitler, in particular, paid close attention to the Duke. The German Foreign Office began circulating reports on Edward's political leanings. Secret emissaries were sent to gauge his attitude toward fascism. What they found shocked even Nazi officials. Coming up, Edward's shocking 1937 visit to Nazi Germany. Edward and Wallis, newly titled but stripped of real power, were placed in France. It was meant to be a quiet retirement, but Edward was restless, and his reputation still carried weight. Across Europe, fascist leaders took notice. Hitler knew that a former king still held influence among the British elite and the general population. In 1937, just 1 year after abdicating, Edward and Wallis accepted an invitation to tour Germany. A formal visit, they claimed. Nothing political. But footage showed something else. Edward giving the Nazi salute, touring German factories, smiling with SS officials, and worse, posing for photos with swastika banners fluttering above him. And then he met with Hitler, in private. No official minutes, no recording, just a quiet meeting between Britain's former king and the most dangerous man in Europe. What did they say? We may never know. But Hitler walked away impressed. He is friendly to Germany, he would later say. He understands our position. But understand or agree? And the real question, was this visit mere optics or the beginning of something far more sinister? Coming up next, Operation Willi, and the terrifying Nazi plot to put Edward back on the throne. To the public, Edward and Wallis were tourists. But British intelligence was alarmed. Memos from the Foreign Office warned that Edward was being used as a propaganda tool. German documents later revealed what British spies feared. Edward was seen as a potential ally, a man who could lead a puppet monarchy in a Nazi-occupied Britain. Hitler reportedly believed that if Britain were invaded, Edward could be reinstated as king under Nazi control. This wasn't fantasy. It became policy. The code name, Operation Willi. And it was terrifyingly simple. Abduct Edward, persuade him Britain was collapsing, and reinstall him as king once London fell. Edward's own views didn't help. In private, he voiced sympathy for fascism and criticized democratic governments. In public, he remained quiet. But silence in times of evil can be its own betrayal. The Nazis even believed Wallis could be turned. Her connections in high society made her a useful figure. Some reports suggested she had affairs with Nazi agents. Claims still debated, but never entirely disproven. Coming up next, how British intelligence scrambled to stop it, and how close Edward came to outright treason. MI5, MI6, the FBI, all had files on Edward. Documents declassified decades later painted a chilling picture. In secret correspondence, the Duke expressed criticisms of Churchill. He described the bombing of Britain as the fault of the British government, and he repeatedly downplayed Hitler's aggression. Wallis, too, was under suspicion. American intelligence had intercepted messages between her and known Nazi sympathizers. The Nazis saw opportunity. Willi would be swift. Capture Edward in France, convince him Britain would fall, and offer him the throne once London was in German hands. But British intelligence got wind of it, and they acted. Churchill, furious and terrified, forced Edward out of Europe. It wasn't enough to warn him. He had to be removed entirely. Coming up next, the exile within the exile, a punishment hidden behind tropical palms. Before we continue, if you're fascinated by these buried chapters of history, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. We're just getting started. There are more secrets to uncover. In 1940, Edward was appointed governor of the Bahamas. To the public, it looked like a noble posting. But insiders knew better. It was exile, plain and simple. A remote island, a powerless title, surveillance on every move. Churchill had neutralized the threat without scandal, without trial, without admitting how close Britain had come to royal betrayal. Wallis hated it. Edward grew bitter. He felt discarded by the crown and history. But the files don't lie. The royal family closed ranks. Edward's Nazi ties became an unspoken shame, buried until decades later. British archives, redacted for decades, slowly revealed a campaign not of lies, but of strategic omission. The monarchy survived, but only by burying its secrets deep beneath the sand. Historians now believe Edward's appointment to the Bahamas was not only to keep him out of Nazi hands, but to isolate him from British politics altogether. The less he said, the safer the crown remained. Coming up next, what history chooses to remember and what it deliberately forgets. Edward VIII is remembered as the king who gave up everything for love. But love, like history, can be a convenient story. The truth is more dangerous. He was a man who misunderstood power, who mistook dictatorship for stability, who chose comfort over conscience. Had Hitler succeeded, Edward may have ruled Britain again, not as a monarch of the people, but as a symbol of surrender. And so history erased him, not through violence, but through silence. His portrait hangs quietly in the halls of Windsor, but his shadow still stretches across the darkest days of the 20th century. He lived out his days in comfortable obscurity. But history never forgets those who came close to changing its course, for the worse. Coming up next, one final question that haunts the legacy of Edward VIII. What makes a traitor? Is it intent? Is it action? Or is it simply being in the wrong place with the wrong sympathies at the worst possible time? Edward never wore the crown again. But in another world, he might have, under a different flag, under a different future. And the terrifying part? We were one invasion away from seeing it happen. If you found this story as shocking as we did, hit the like button, subscribe for more hidden chapters of history, and turn on the bell so you never miss what they never wanted you to know. And if you want more stories of scandal, secrets, and betrayals that changed the course of the world, watch the next video on screen. It might just change how you see the past.